Hi, you're listening to the She Speaks, We Hear podcast. This is a platform for British Muslim women to talk about the issues that matter to them. Muslim women have been identified as a hard-to-reach section of society. Our aim on this podcast is to get our voices heard. Hi and salam. This is episode 7 of the She Speaks, We Hear podcast with me, Sharmeen Ziauddin. A bit of a different episode today as my guest is comedian Ola Habib. She's relatively new to the world of stand-up, only starting a few years ago, but she's already toured with some household names. I'm going to stop talking and pass it over to her. Assalamu alaikum, Ola, and welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. It's a bit of a miserable evening, isn't it? It's not wet, but it's just dark and grey.
You know, it was really sunny earlier. I don't know what happened, but I literally took full advantage and went at least for a mile walk. But when is it ever good consistently?
No, January is like the most depressing month. But that's cool because we've got you on and, you're a comedian. Not that I expect you to make jokes, it's fine. But hopefully it'll be a lighter episode than we usually have. Tell me about yourself, Ola. Where are you from and how did you get into comedy?
So I'm living in Portsmouth. So my parents are Sudanese, but born and raised in Portsmouth, lived in Portsmouth my whole life, up to about 2015. I'm a clinical pharmacist.
Wow.
So the fun is not most exciting.
Key worker.
Yeah. Also, they want you to think, but it's good. I've been doing pharmacy for like 11 years, but it was never what I really wanted to do. Like subhanallah, always used to say like to my brothers, we're all literally like a year apart. And I used to always say, do you know what, I've always had this urge to do like bigger and better things. And I always thought those bigger and better things were, do the first discovery for the first transdermal this, or, something really like pharmaceutical. But it just never, it wasn't exciting.
Do you come from a big family? Like, do you have a lot of siblings?
Yes, it's 5 of us all together.
Okay. Mashallah.
So yeah, I think it's wow. Most people are like, oh, that's a lot for us. It's like just below average. So, but I don't know. It was growing up. I always, I always talk about my dad and how funny he is and how he would always like brighten up a room, and my friends would always. I don't know, I'd always have this urge to be like the funny one in the group, and whenever things get a bit boring, you just want to like do a bit of banter and this and that. So I just remember like, I enjoy making people laugh. Why not make a career out of it? So I remember like even from the days of university and whilst I was working, I'd always like look up, like Muslim comics, Muslim this, Muslim that. Nothing ever used to come up. Nothing, like literally there's no Muslim women doing comedy at that time. There was no Muslim women doing like hosting. You don't really see them on TV. So there was automatically a gap, and I automatically knew at that point there needs to be someone like that representing. So yeah, I moved up to Manchester and got a job in North Manchester, and I just thought, I kept putting it off year after year. Every time I'd be like, next year I'll do it, next year I'll do it. But then it just got to a point where I was like, it's literally now or never. So I signed up to a open mic, just googled it, top 10 open mics in Manchester. Loads came up. I applied to all of them, but there's only one that messaged me back because they don't know who I am. They see the name, they're like, who is this person? And that was someone called Jason Cook, and he ran a gig in a venue called the Apple and Ape.
So is that the way it works? You just randomly apply and they just pick whoever they think sounds interesting?
Well, yeah, some people give you chances, some people don't.
I'm really into comedy, by the way. This is why I was very keen to get you on, because I watch a lot of comedy, listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, and when I first saw you, and I was like, oh my God, it's a hijabi comedian. I need to get in touch with this woman. Anyway, do carry on with your story.
No, that was pretty much it. Yeah, you just apply. There's some walk-in ones, but the walk-in ones, well, it's the kind of the same thing. Jason's one, sometimes people turn up, and if there's space, they'll put you on. But I didn't know that. I'm not used to applying for comedy nights. I'm used to applying for pharmacy jobs. So it was a completely new experience for me. And he was like, yeah, he gave me a date, and I literally just turned up. And it was weird. I think it was like 3 audience members, and it was the downstairs was a pub, and like I've never been in a pub before, so it was really quite bizarre for me. Even the security guard was like, "Are you lost, love? Are you lost?" And I was like, "I'm here for the comedy night." And I could kind of tell by his face, like, like what the hell. I'd just come from work, so I had like my maxi skirt on, I had like a long blouse on, like with hijab. And so I think it was like a little bit taken aback. So it was held in like a room upstairs,
like a function room.
Function room, yeah. It was held in a function room, and I did 5 minutes. That's the restrictions. You can't go beyond that. And it's mad to think that's where it all started. Literally, that is literally where it all started.
So that 5 minutes, were you nervous?
I was a little bit, but I think the fact that there was only 3 people there,
that probably helped.
Yeah, it helped. And like I do, I do meetings to more people than that, with stuff that I don't even rehearse. So, it wasn't, but no, I don't. I think it's so little people, it didn't faze me as much.
And those 3 people, did they like your material?
I don't really think they were compos mentis. I think they were so drunk that I could have literally have been a leprechaun singing, and I don't think they would have noticed any difference. But Jason enjoyed it, and the MC enjoyed it. And the MC is a really good friend of mine. He's a comedian in the Northwest as well. His name's Sean Paskowski. And he MCs quite a few nights, open mics in Manchester. So he hooked me up with a few other open mics. And the thing is with open mics, it's literally luck who performs there or who's watching. And if the right people are there at the right time, then lucky you. But then sometimes you people are doing the same open mic and they're just not moving up. But with the comedy world, it's such a small world.
So after that first open mic, then did you do lots more? What happened after that?
So I did that first open mic, and then Sean told me that there was an opening for a night that he does in like 3 weeks. And it happened that Jason mentioned me to somebody else, and that other person booked me like the following week for a really small open mic. And then it was just open mic after open mic after open mic. And I was literally gigging, like within a month, I was doing like maybe 3 or 4 gigs a week after work. And the thing is with me, like alhamdulillah, like I drive, and because I've got a job during the day, because you don't make any money from it. It's actually people underestimate how expensive it is at the beginning, because you're not making any money. You don't get paid for anything.
Right.
Like sometimes after months of doing it, if you're lucky, they'll give you like a tenner towards expenses or something. But in the first, like, I'd say year and a bit, like I think I was paid twice, like 20 quid or something. So it's really, really, really expensive. For me, it was anyways. Like I can only speak for myself, but it cost me a lot at the beginning. And that's why you find like a lot of people only do local gigs, because they can get there easily. But because I wanted my name to get round everywhere, I was driving. So I lived in Manchester. I was driving to Liverpool. I was driving to Blackburn. I was driving to Yorkshire. I was driving to London. I would go everywhere, even if it's unpaid, but I would look them up first. So I would see if there was going to be more than 30 audience members. I'd go, like, it wouldn't bother me.
Yeah,
So,
I think what your story is, what it reveals is that you have to be really, really motivated, passionate, and very determined to get into comedy, because it's a lot of hard work for nothing until you get that break. And lots of people don't get that break.
100%, 100%. You get a lot of people who would say, oh, you're so lucky, it's because you tick all the diversity boxes. Oh, you got it because you tick all the diversity boxes. And I'm like, actually, there's a lot of people that tick the diversity boxes that don't make it anywhere, but people don't see the amount of work that people who do want to make it to the next level, how much they put in it. Like, I work sometimes a 60-hour week. I'd get home at like 7 o'clock, or sometimes I'd travel straight after work. I'd finish work at like 7, half 7, travel to a gig and then go back. There's been times where I'd travel from Manchester all the way to like Harrogate, to Yorkshire, to like, you know, Bradford. I'd commute like an hour and a half on a work day and get back, knowing that potentially could be the gig where someone spots me or someone notices me. So no, it is a lot of hard work. I think people, I don't know what people think it entails, but that first, particularly that first year and a half, was so tough.
So I'm glad you mentioned that about the diversity thing, because no doubt there'll be people who think that whenever any sort of brown or Asian or black comedian or a female comedian or obviously a hijabi like yourself comes on, that is what a lot of people do think. And I'm glad you kind of set the record straight with that, to demonstrate how much hard work it is. And you know that you're not the only Muslim woman who has tried her hand at comedy. I'm sure there's lots who try. It's just about the ones that you actually get to see. Congratulations that you've kind of made it into mainstream. So you were on the Mo Gilligan show, weren't you? Is it the latest show? Was that your first kind of main TV appearance?
I think it was my first or second, or maybe third. I can't remember which one I did first. I think it was my second.
That must have been nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was. It was. The audience wasn't that big because of COVID at the time, but I don't know what it was. But yeah, I was really nervous. But it then prepared me for the next thing. And yeah, like last month, I was one of the acts for the O2 with Mo as well. And that was like mad. I went from my usual maximum like 600-700 people in the audience, like 14,500 people. So I think now that I've done that, I'm hoping everything else. Do you know what? It doesn't even make a difference. I was less nervous about performing in front of 14,000 people than doing like a dead gig for like 20 people, or even I find doing intimate gigs for like less than 6 people the hardest.
I know what you mean. It's more intimate, as you said, and it's like you can see everybody's faces clearly, whereas in thousands of people you can't really, you can blur them out, I would imagine.
You can, and you know, when there's like only limited amount of people, they make them all sit in the front, so you're literally just talking to 5 people. And the thing is, with big audiences, they kind of like feed off each other's energy. When it's only 5 people, it's just like, oh, I don't know, I don't like it. But
so after that year and a half of driving up and down the country and not being paid, what happened then?
COVID.
Oh, okay.
Started to creep in a little bit. It wasn't big, but it started to creep in a little bit. So there was a lot of, what's going on? Work was getting absolutely crazy. And then I got signed. And then when I got signed, sent off the contract, like, let's get this moving, lockdown.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
And then obviously your day job must have got completely manic after that.
Then, yeah, it got really, really manic. So it was just like writing and trying to get as much done. Zoom gigs, lots of Zoom gigs, not lots and lots, but a fair number of Zoom gigs. And then, oh, do you know what? Is it weird to say that I don't even know what happened in that year? I think there was an in-between period where I did like literally one gig in London, and then it went back to lockdown again. So it was just
2020 is a blur for everyone. Don't worry about it. But how has your family reacted? Your immediate family, your parents, your siblings.
oh, my siblings are amazing. My siblings are so supportive. Two of my siblings, so my oldest brother's a doctor. My next brother, who's like a year younger than me, he did engineering, but really wanted to get into the arts and like be like, he's very creative. So he works as an art director for an advertisement company. So, my parents were a bit funny with it. They were like, oh, you're an engineer, why would you go and do? Because they didn't really kind of get what he did, if you like.
Yeah, sounds like every other Asian parent. I know you're from Sudan, but this is what.
Yeah, I think anyone from like kind of immigrant backgrounds has the same, like, there's something we all have in common, if they don't know what it is or have heard of it, or, it's not one of these top, medicine, pharmacy, engineering, law, whatever, they don't kind of process it. But, like, alhamdulillah, my brother's doing really, really well. They still sometimes, a lot of the times, all the time, say we still don't really know what he does or get what he does. But he's doing it. My sister, she started pharmacy as well, learned from my mistakes and didn't drag pharmacy out for 10 or 11 years. So she dropped out when she was in third year, and she was like, I see what the other brother's doing, the art direction. She was like, I really want to get into it. So it's taken her a long time, but now she's working for a good company, doing the same thing. So we kind of all support each other. Like, if that's a decision we make, my brothers come to loads of my comedy nights, and they've started to see that I'm now working with people that before I did comedy, they used to watch.
Right.
So it was mad for them, for example, like my sister especially, it was mad for her to see that, I worked with people like Mo Gilligan, that I've worked with people like, I don't know, like, it's just weird. It's just bizarre. So they're so supportive. So they're really, really lovely.
When I mentioned your mum, you made a funny face. What does she think of your comedy? Does she watch any of your gigs?
She doesn't even watch English TV.
Oh, fair enough. Does she know? I mean, because you're still working full time. Are you working full time in pharmacy?
I cut down to part time now.
Okay.
Slowly dropping. So it went from 5 days to 4 to 3, and I'm probably going to cut it down to 2 now, because it's just too much to balance. It's overwhelming. But I'm kind of keeping the pharmacy. I think it is rewarding, but it's more like for the community to be like, oh yeah, she does comedy. She's like, they see comedy as like a hobby.
Yeah.
So I do the pharmacy so they can still see that I'm a pharmacist. You know what I mean? But then sometimes I think to myself, even if I stop doing it, I can still tell them I do it. I'm still registered. Like, what difference does it make? I've never had any of my family members walk into a pharmacy or a hospital that I work in. Like, what difference does it actually make? But I think psychologically, it gives me comfort to know I'm there, so I can say I'm still doing it without having that conscience that I'm lying, because I'm telling the truth. I'm still doing it. So yeah, I'm still doing it.
Your parents are tricky, aren't they?
Yeah, they're really. It's a different generation. It's a different, they came from a different country where being a doctor is everything, but they don't know how different it is there to here. Like, when you go to Sudan, the way they treat pharmacists, they're like, oh, thank you. They call them doctors in Sudan, the doctors of pharmacy. Oh, thank you, doctor. You saved my life. Oh, blah, blah. Like, it seems like such a big thing, but they don't see how much we're treated like shit here. Like, you know, you saying you're a pharmacist in Sudan is one thing. You saying, oh, I'm a pharmacist here, the kind of treatment that you get is not. It's some people obviously appreciate, like some people appreciate, but generally you don't feel like, oh, I'm a pharmacist, I'm very appreciated in this country. It's not like that.
So did you feel through this pandemic, did you feel less appreciated or more appreciated than you did before the pandemic started as a pharmacist?
I don't think it made any difference, because when people think pharmacy, let's be honest, they think a little shop in the corner that counts tablets, puts it in a box, and gives you £1 reading glasses and chop a chomp lollipops. This is people's perception of pharmacists, essentially. Give me some paracetamol, give me some ibuprofen, give me the morning after pill, give me some extra large latex gloves. This is the perception people have. But like, I'm a specialist pharmacist and I work in a hospital, and they were like, oh, you work in a pharmacy in a hospital? And I'm like, no, like I'm ward based, I'm clinical based, I do drug histories, I counsel, I this, I that, I do like, there's a massive like, but I don't think that's changed. I think people still have that perception of pharmacists. But even if they didn't, I think in the grand scheme of things, doctor, wow, nurse, wow. But I don't feel like pharmacists get that same appreciation. That's not to say that I don't see the benefits of what we do. Of course we do. I would say, like, honestly, in some of the places I worked, I honestly believe if I wasn't there, they would lose about 20% of their patients with the errors that I pick up on. But people don't see that. People don't get what we do. Like, someone will hand in a prescription in your workplace, and I'll be like, oh, this is really wrong. Oh, this is wrong. They've given them 100. I'm telling you, sometimes I've picked up where they've given 100 times the dose because the doctor hasn't calculated the thingy properly.
This is not the first time I've heard this. I've heard this from other pharmacist friends. They pick up, like, I think 6 out of 10 of them are wrong, the prescriptions they got. That was a stat my friend gave me.
Trust me, when you work in hospital, the stuff you pick up on, it's insane. But then, you know, the patient's waiting. They're like, well, the doctor's prescribed it. I'm like, it's wrong. And they're like, all you have to do is go to the shelf, find it, and pick it off and give it to me. People don't really kind of understand. So even through comedy, like, you can educate people about stuff. So even though I'm moving away from pharmacy, I've still got it's still a really important job. Like, I've been doing it for 11 years. So I know what it consists of. So I can use my platform to make people aware that we're more than just pill poppers. Are we pill poppers? Pill counters. We're more than
dispensers.
That.
Well, it's funny because in some countries, pharmacists, you can give drugs without being a pharmacist, but you just work at the pharmacy. Like, there's different, basically, it means different things in different countries.
Yeah. Even in this country, you there's so many prescribing pharmacists. Like there's a lot of GPs nowadays that hire pharmacists, train them to be prescribers, and the pharmacists are the ones holding the clinic. So some people don't even see GPs anymore. They'll see nurses, and they'll see pharmacists, and the pharmacists be the ones prescribing. But again, people don't know about this stuff because they've already got that kind of perception in their head. They're not kind of moving forward with the times. But I'm not here to talk about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's get back to comedy. So that's much more exciting, isn't it? It's really interesting about the pharmacy thing. Honestly, given that we've had a pandemic, I mean, it is definitely more relevant to now than it was. I guess people can maybe appreciate pharmacists a little bit more than they have in the past. But anyway, yes, moving on back to comedy. How's the reception been from Muslims and non-Muslims in terms of things maybe on social media? Like, have you had a good reaction? What has your kind of experience been on the comedy circuit of your audiences? Is there a difference between Muslim audiences and non-Muslim audiences?
They both have the curiosity. So non-Muslims who never see or, you know, come into, it's not part of their social circles, like Muslim women and this and that, they're curious to see, you know, what is she going to talk about? And at the same time, Muslims also don't see Muslim women, hijabis, on TV and this and that. So they're also curious as to what I'm going to say and what I'm going to come up with. Non-Muslims, or just generally, like there's been a lot of support, even within the Muslim community, there's been a lot of support, but obviously you're always going to get your negative nitties saying stuff and making assumptions almost. And it's just like, you are in no position to be judging anyone's iman or faith. Like, people try to make me feel that because I'm doing this, it's like it's haram. And it's like, what's haram about it? What's haram about it? Oh, you know, speaking on a platform in front of lots of people. And I'm like, well, okay, is it haram for a woman, a female, like a Muslim woman, to go to a pharmacy congress and talk about a new insulin that's been developed? Is that haram? No, that's not haram. Okay, so it's haram for a woman to say jokes in front of 100 people, but it's halal for a woman to talk about medicine in front of the audiences that go to listen about that are the same audience that go, what's the difference? Like, literally, what's the difference? I can understand if the content is blasphemous, like, you know, involves shirk, you know, whatever, then I get that. But essentially, what's the difference? Tell me, Sharmeen, what's the difference?
Yeah, no, there's no difference.
Because I'm actually interested.
There's no difference, really. It's just people are not used to it, and Muslim men might not be used to it, and white men may not be used to it, and it's just about normalising the fact that, you know what, a Muslim woman in a hijab can be a stand-up comedian. Why can't she be a stand-up comedian? It's just because they've never seen one before.
Exactly. Like, I don't think, if there are certain things that I believe can jeopardize, in my opinion, I'll talk about it objectively because it's me. There's some things that I feel can jeopardize my Islam, my deen, and I wouldn't do them. There's certain things I wouldn't say, there's certain gigs I wouldn't do, there's certain actions I wouldn't do, there's certain things that I just wouldn't do. Not just because of an Islamic, it's not even an Islamic thing, it's a moral thing. That morally, there's things that I wouldn't do. Ethically, there's some things that I wouldn't do. I try to stay as true to myself and my deen as I possibly can. And if something evidently, if someone gives me, I don't know, for example, this is never going to happen, but I'm just a hypothetical example. If someone gave me a role in a sitcom as a bacon eating, cider drinking Satanist, obviously I wouldn't take it. Even if it paid me millions, of course I wouldn't take it, because I'm trying to, there are people that would, who are Muslim, but me personally, I just wouldn't do it. Even though it's acting and I know it's not me and I don't do it in real life and this and that, I wouldn't do it. Like, I wouldn't. So if anything, I should be not praised, but people should appreciate that, you know, I'm doing something that's different and not having to, like, I don't talk about sex, I don't talk about my own personal thing, because I know that, you know, if family ever watch it, and I have a responsibility in my community, within my religion, to have a good representation, or what I believe is a good representation. The way I think about it is, I perform in a way that I imagine that Baba is sat in the audience. Now, would I say the same things if my dad was sat in the audience? Yes, I would. And my parents are very devout. So if I'm able to say certain things in front of my parents, then I don't see what the problem is. There have been times where I haven't said things that I would say in front of my parents. And I think there has been an occasion where my dad's seen it, because Sudanese WhatsApp is the most horrific thing. You so much as fart, and the whole of the Sudanese diaspora around the world will know about it. So anything that I do, now that people have heard about me, you best believe my parents are going to see it. So there has been certain things that he's come to me and he was like, this has been brought to my attention, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, shit, Dad, yeah, I know. That was ages ago and it's just a slip of the tongue. I've got these personalities where I speak before I think. And I'm working really hard on that. And it's because someone said something to me that really irritated me, and I just responded. And I know I shouldn't have said it, but you know, so if anything, I think comedy's bettered me because I'm becoming more careful with what I say. Whereas before, no one's going to see me again. It's not like I don't care. But now that people are, you know, there's social media, such a powerful thing. I've become, or trying to become, more careful with what comes out of my mouth. If anything, I feel like comedy's bettered me as a person.
I can completely empathise with the fact that you have to not just focus on your material and trying to make people laugh and whatnot, like every other comedian, but you have to just make sure it's clean in that respect. So you're, you know, like your parents would be watching. That is hard, I would imagine. I've watched a couple of clips of yours, and your content it does play on the stereotypes and the perception that people have of Muslims, and you kind of play on that a lot. Going forward, are you gonna bring in jokes about pharmacy, or have you already done that? I haven't heard anything recent, but I've heard a lot of content which is it's funny and it makes people laugh about terrorism related jokes and that kind of stuff.
Um, I tend to, yeah. So with stereotypes, I don't know what you've watched. I know, like at the beginning, like literally in the first few months, I made the mistake of my jokes being what I think people want to hear. But now I don't even, like, if I mention something like that, it's probably bouncing off something I say, and like I'll be like, oh, I bet that's what you think. But it's more like how I'm feeling at the time and what I've experienced at the time and how I come out of it, kind of thing. I'm trying to think of an example, but I can't think of an example top of my head. But yeah, pharmacy. Yeah, I think pharmacy, the pharmacy side of it, it's not so much stand up that much. It's like I write. So I write. I've got other projects in the go that are not stand up. It's more like written work. So some aspects of that, but a lot of people don't even know I'm a pharmacist.
Yeah, I
Don't
didn't
like.
know. I didn't know until I booked
Yeah,
you for this
yeah,
and found out
yeah.
you were
I
working
don't, I
till
don't tend to
five
talk
every
about
day.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
no. I don't tend to talk about it because it's like,
No, I mean it's not relevant. It's only relevant if it's in the jokes, right?
yeah, 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 and I just, because I feel like once someone tells them their career, like if you're a doctor and a comedian, the doctor comes first. Oh, this person, doctor, blah blah blah, and is a comedian. I never wanted that. I wanted to be a comedian first and a pharmacist second. So that's why I kind of like shy it away. But I think at the moment, like I want to like talk about like what is it, like how good is it for me, how bad is it for me, but maybe like almost like incorporate it rather than make it the main thing. That was always a thing I didn't want to do, like make it, oh, I'm a pharmacist and this happened and that happened. It's just like, so what? So what?
And what comedians did you sort of grow up watching? Who do you like watching now? Who do you find really funny?
So there's a comedian who's actually signed with the same management as me. His name's Michael Odwali. I really enjoy his writing. He's he's just so funny, so clever. Like he would relate some like big issue to something so small. Like he would compare, oh, this is a really dark example, but like he'll compare like poverty and he'll compare it to like a Game Boy. Like, oh, you know how you play. It sounds really stupid. That just shows how much better he is at it than
Well,
me.
listeners can Google him, no doubt.
Michael Adwali, he is absolutely, he's just so intelligent with his work. So, yes, pretty much him at the moment. I've been like watching a lot of his stuff, listening to a lot of his podcasts. And yeah.
Before that, growing up, did you watch a lot of comedy or any comedians that you used to watch?
Not really. Unfortunately, like I loved comedy, but it was more like comedy movies we used to watch because we never really had platforms. Do you remember back in the day when there was only 4 channels, BBC
Yeah.
One, Two, ITV, and Channel 4? Yeah, that's all we had. And like we call it Dish, which is like all the foreign channels.
Yes.
So that's literally all we had. So we couldn't see anything. But I remember watching Blue Streak, and it was just so funny, Dave, because Martin Lawrence and Dave Chappelle. So I saw Dave Chappelle and I was like, that guy's so funny. And then I saw him again in The Nutty Professor, and I was like, that guy, it's Eddie Murphy, but the Reggie, he was. So
Oh,
I saw some stuff on it.
Was he Reggie?
Yeah, I think so. Oh my God, if I'm wrong, I am a disgrace to mankind.
You know what? He might not be.
Back in the day, I thought he was, but that's getting Googled. Was he not? No, I don't think it was, you know.
I don't
now
think
that you've
it
said
was.
it.
Because you know what? Nutty Professor was on about a year ago and I watched a little bit of it and the Reggie bit came up and he didn't look familiar to me. Although at the
No, I
time,
don't think.
it was somebody, maybe it was somebody else. But anyway, yeah, see, all of Dave Chappelle's shows are now on Netflix. And actually, you're right, because there never really used to be any stand-up. And now it's like there'll always be one channel that is showing live at the Apollo or something. It is.
It was Dave Chappelle. Yeah!
Dave Chappelle was Reggie in The Nutty Professor. Wow, that is so cool.
Well, for me, because I would have looked like an absolute knob if it was.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if I don't know my comedians, but yeah, it matters if you don't, so well done.
That was such a relief. I would have looked so foolish or sounded very foolish. But yeah, I didn't. But I started watching it like during uni and this and that. And I remember this is gonna sound so random, but the first comedian that I watched his full set ever was Russell Peters.
Russell Peters. Oh, the American guy.
Is he not Canadian? Indian Canadian.
Canadian. He's quite well known, isn't he, over there?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy.
Okay, so right now Ola is showing me a picture on her phone. Yep, I think I've seen him. Yep. See, a lot of people don't know anything about comedy. They just know like like I said to you, I watch a lot of comedy and I mention like this, that and the other two to friends and they don't know who I'm talking about. Like I think I mentioned like Sidhu V to is it Sidhu V? Sindhu V, sorry. Sindhu V, yeah, to a friend. She's like, who's that? And I was like, oh my gosh, she's so funny. Like they don't know who she is.
I am notorious. You can ask any of my comedian circle of friends, but they'll be like, Ola is the one that literally doesn't know anybody. I don't. But my thing is, why would I know someone that I haven't watched? And why would I know someone that is not taking part in things that I tend to watch?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's next for you? What have you got lined up in terms of comedy gigs? Where can we watch you? Where can we come and see you?
So I've got gigs scattered here, there, and everywhere. I'm doing quite a bit of writing, so I've got a script in development at the moment.
That's very exciting. Is that for your own show or another show, or
for a show that I've written? I think that is just about all I can say.
Oh, that's very mysterious. But you're not a stand-up thing.
No. It's a
script.
I scripted, yeah.
Fantastic.
And I want to write more scripts. It's been good. It's putting everything that you want to happen that you know could never happen or will not happen in a scripted form. It's actually therapy. So everything you've ever wanted to happen that you knew could never happen, you just put it down, like all your imagination on a piece of paper. It's such a therapeutic thing. So I'm going to be doing a bit of that, and just got some snippets of TV stuff here and there. But it's only January, so anything can happen. But so far, alhamdulillah, it's looking okay.
What advice would you give to any young women listening who are thinking about getting into comedy?
Do it. There is literally, I get asked this question all the time. Do it. Just do it. You know, not, oh, think about all this and don't think about anything. At the end of the day, I personally believe what differs a good comedian from a fantastic comedian. A fantastic comedian is whatever you see on stage is what you see on person. Talk about things that happen to you. And, you know, especially as like everybody has a story to tell, it's how you tell it. Get a good 5 minute set done and just do it. Don't wait around. Don't ask advice. Don't do any of that. Just do it.
Sounds like good advice. And how can people find you, get in touch with you, keep up to date with any performances you're doing, like on social media?
So mostly Instagram and Twitter, but mostly Instagram, you'll see I try and post things in advance of what I'm doing. So on at the Ola Habib. And if there's someone who's listening who genuinely wants to, not just with comedy, but with comedy, with writing, with anything like that, if you're genuinely interested and want to be pointed in the right direction, just message me. I've been getting loads of, like, not loads, but I've been getting quite a bit of messages from people who, oh, if I want to do this, and literally just tell them and just send them to the right people. Like, I'm more than happy to do that. So just reach out.
Thank you, Ola. It's been really nice speaking to you and very insightful. It's been really fun. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for having me.
That was Ola Habib. You don't see a lot of Muslim hijab-wearing female Sudanese comedians, so what an inspiration she is to any female aspiring comedians out there. I've put a link to her management page in the show notes so you can check her out there. We've been pretty busy at She Speaks We Hear headquarters. We've hosted a series of online workshops with transformational coach Ziauddin, which have been really uplifting for those that took part. On February the 4th, we have a very exciting event that I'm so looking forward to. It's in collaboration with Halal Dinner Club and Leaf Coaching, where you can have a night out at Khan's restaurant in Bayswater, London, and we'll be in conversation with our founder, Akila Ahmed, Alia Zadi, who is head of content strategy, and myself. We may still have a couple of tickets left. Price is £29, but if you book now, you can get the early bird rate of £25. Check out our Instagram account for more details, or you can go to leafcoaching.com for tickets. Hope to see some of you there. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please rate and review, as it will help others find the podcast. Do follow so your podcast app can update you with the latest episode. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse and Facebook. Just search She Speaks, We Hear. See you next time.